It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? It's a neighborly day in this beauty wood, neighborly day for a beauty. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? I have always wanted to have a neighbor just like you. Always wanted to live in a neighborhood with you. So let's make the most of this beautiful day. Since we're together, we might as well say, would you be mine? Could you be mine? Won't you be my neighbor? Won't you be? Won't you be? Please, won't you be my neighbor? Welcome, neighbor. It's always good when we can be together, especially during these times of pandemic. I hope you and your family are well and you're staying safe. And I bet you're wondering why I'm dressed like this today, right? Well, did you know that this is the way lawyers used to dress in the olden days? When they had important work to do and decisions to make? It's true. And the presiding lawyer would sit at a desk just like this. If the other lawyers were speaking out of turn or too loudly, then he would pound on his gavel and on the desk like this and shout, "Order in the court." Now, I sometimes have to use this gavel at my house when Mrs. Simons argues too loudly with me. "Order in the home." Well, afterwards, I often find myself having to sleep on the couch. Do you know why that is? Can't figure it. Anyway, well, I also have important work to do today. The board of directors has asked me to talk with you about the proposed amendments to the CCRs in order to help you make your decisions about them. Yes, I know the ballot you received already contained a brief explanation of each proposed amendment, but I suppose the board was worried that some of you may have misplaced your reading glasses and are unable to read such explanations. But not to fear, I will go over each of them with you right now. So, let's get to it. Hopefully you each received ballot material on the proposed amendment to the CCRs like this. My, this is a lot of heavy material. Can't believe it. Wait a minute, that's not right. Oh Lord. What is this? Oh my gosh, how did that get in there? I'm pretty sure this was not part of your mailing, right? There must be a reasonable explanation for this. What could that be? Oh wait, I see what happened. You know, there's a mailing label back here, and it reads E.J. Nicholas. Oh, wait a minute, that's my neighbor, Nick Nicholas. You know, the mailman must have gotten his mail mixed up and delivered it to me. Oh, well, that's... well, let's just pretend we never saw this, all right? And let's don't say another word about it. We won't say a word to Naughty Nick about it, okay? Mum's the word. Can you say secret? All right, so... how about in the meantime, we don't want to upset Mrs. Simons and have her come in and see this. So I think I'll just maybe put this in a drawer here with my other important legal papers. And I'll take it and give it to the mailman tomorrow. Yes, that's what I'm going to do. Okay, now where were we? Yes, this is much better. Okay, so hopefully you received a ballot that contained all the proposed amendments for the CCRs, and then behind that there are the proposed amendments for the design guidelines. Also in your package you should have received a second amended and restated Declaration of Covenants, Conditions, and Restrictions. And this is actually item 1 we're going to talk about now. So if you turn to your ballot, you'll see item 1, current amended restated declaration of covenants, and the proposed language is really what's contained in this document. These are what we consider mostly administrative changes or cleanup changes. They weren't meant to be substantive, but there were so many of them, we thought it would be best if we bundled them all in one document, so it'd be easier to review and just to approve instead of one by one. So I think they're all pretty self-evident. If you go through them, I have marked 3 that you may think were substantive changes, but in reality they're not. So let me just point out those in case you have questions about them. The first one is going to be in Article 5, Architectural Review. It's in Section 1, Construction Subject to Review. And you'll see on the last line of that paragraph, there's a change from prohibition of removal of any vegetation not within. It currently reads 10-foot radius of the dwelling, and you'll see this change it to 15-foot radius. Well, this is really just to make it consistent with how the design guidelines have been enforced over the years. For whatever reason, this change did not appear in the CCRs, but that's the way ARC has enforced that, and that's the way it's read in the design guidelines for a long time. So this is just to make it consistent with how ARC has been enforcing that over the years. Okay, moving on. The second item you might have a question about has to do with the same Article 5 Architectural Review, but this is in Section 2.1, Changes to the Design Guidelines. And if you look at the last paragraph of that section, you'll see some changes in the language there. And it looks like there's some substantive changes, but in reality, this was just a garbled paragraph. This was language that we first approved back in the 15th Amendment in July of 2013. And unfortunately, that amendment, the language was garbled, and so that's why it's reflected currently the way it is. But the way it's changed now is the true intent and the way it was supposed to have read from the beginning. So that's why we're making that change. It's not substantive, it's just meant to reflect the original intention of the amendment when it was passed in 2013. All right, the last one that I think you may have a question about, it may appear substantive, is in Article 11, General Provisions. It's in Section 3, Term Amendments. You'll see towards the bottom of that paragraph, there's a change in the percentage for getting amendments approved. You'll see a strike through of 2/3 and a new insert of 67%. Well, 2 things on this. One, we had 2/3 in this section. In another section, we had 67%. So there was a conflict there within the document. But more importantly, the North Carolina Plan and Community Act requires that amendments to declaration that has amendments must be approved by 67%. So that's why this is being changed to make it consistent with the North Carolina Plan and Community Act. Everything else I think you'll see is pretty self-evident, the changes. Again, they're just meant to be administrative cleanup, grammar, or just clarification. So if after you read all these, if they all appear substantially fine with you, then please mark your ballot yes for item 1. Okay, let's move on to item 2. This has to do with Article 2, Property Rights, Section 4, Regulation of Uses. And you'll see there's been some changes in that language, as you'll see in the proposed language column. The problem here was that the existing language is that the term common area was used too broadly. And so the current language does not permit the ingress and egress of motorcycles and other motorized vehicles on Creston roads. Creston roads are common areas. So that was probably an unintended consequence. I think the original intent probably was to prohibit all motorized vehicles on trails and on most common areas other than roads and recreational parking areas. So the language has been changed to correct this and to keep trails as pedestrian pathways only. Again, I think these are good changes. If you agree, then please mark item 2 with a yes vote. All right, let's move on to item 3. That deals with Article 4, Assessments, Section 5, Notice and Quorum. This section specifies the notice required to be given for purposes of changing the annual general or special assessments. The bylaws currently require that not less than 30, no more than 60 days prior notice for annual meetings and for meetings where budgets are being considered. And since the changes to the annual general assessments and sometimes special assessments are considered at our annual meetings, along with budget considerations, it just seemed desirable to have a similar notice requirement in this section of the CCRs when a meeting is called for changing either the annual general assessment or special assessments. Again, as noted, we're changing 14 to 30 as a minimum notice and changing from 30 to 60 for maximum notice. Again, trying to make it align better with similar provisions in the bylaws. If you agree with that, let's please mark your ballot yes on item 3. All right, the next item 4 is Article 6, Use Restrictions, Section 6B, Motor Vehicle Parking. The current language, as you can see, does not permit any vehicle to park on Creston roads. Probably an unintended consequence. The new language creates an exception for maintenance vehicles and equipment on roads and for trucks and heavy equipment and vehicles parked on a site for maintenance or site improvement purposes. The new language also permits vehicles other than maintenance vehicles and equipment to be parked on Creston roads for up to 24 hours or as otherwise permitted by the board. Again, if you agree with these changes, please mark your ballot yes for item 4. Moving on to item 5. This deals with Article 11, General Provisions, Section 6, Action without a meeting and telephone conferences. Well, prior to the recent bylaws amendments, the association did not have authority to conduct electronic meetings. And this change now aligns with similar changes that have been, and language that have been approved in the bylaws, and will leave open the option for the board to allow electronic meeting participation and voting by membership at meetings, which is what the board actually is elected to do for this year. So again, this is making it consistent with what the bylaw changes already provide, so I hope you'll mark this with a yes on item 5. Lastly, we go to item 6, which is Article 6, Use Restrictions, Section 1, Trees. Here, there's a new prohibition for tree topping being submitted for a vote. Actually, this is being discussed at length by Marshall Fisher in his video, so I encourage you to watch that video for further explanation. I'm not going to go into it now, but if you approve of this language, then you would need to mark your ballot with a yes on item 6. Well, I think that about wraps things up for now. You know, it's always a good feeling when we can be together. Such a good feeling to know you're alive. It's such a happy feeling you're growing inside when you wake up ready to say, I think I'll make a snappy new day. It's such a good feeling, very good feeling, feeling to know that I'll be back when the day is new, and I'll have more ideas for you, and you'll have things you'll want to talk about. I will too. You always make each day such a special day. You know how? By just your being you. Only one person in the whole world like you. That's you yourself. Well, see you next time. Bye-bye.